Welcome to Supercool, the show about low-carbon innovations now scaling. Each week, we talk with the founders, CEOs, and executives whose companies are winning customers, growing revenue, and capturing market share by turning carbon-cutting ideas into competitive advantage. This is the rise of the low-carbon economy, a multi-trillion-dollar transformation already underway. I'm your host, Josh Dorfman. I once built an entire media company around a very basic idea. I hated recycling, separating trash into different bins, washing tiny little plastic takeout cups, wondering which empty bottles were made of the right plastic, forgetting that my pizza box couldn't be recycled because it had been in contact with the pizza and now had grease stains. It was a pain. I didn't like it. I honestly wasn't good at it, and I really didn't do it. And that became the genesis of a primetime reality television series on Sundance Channel and a live daily radio show on SiriusXM called The Lazy Environmentalist, hosted by and starring me. My task was to show other lazy Americans who still cared about the environment that there was a middle way, a way to live your values without trying very hard. I never felt proud of my behavior, and that wasn't the point. This wasn't about what I should do. This was about what I was willing to do. It was about finding green solutions that understood the reality of suboptimal environmental behavior, such as my own. Practical approaches that didn't ask anyone to change how they lived, but made the green choices either fit their lives or better yet improve them, was what we were striving for. I was reminded of the lazy environmentalist this week when speaking with Albert Douer, CEO of UBQ Materials, a company pioneering a new approach to the age-old recycling problem. UBQ doesn't care if you separate your recyclables. In fact, they don't want you to. Instead, they make an entirely new bioplastic from everything in your trash bag. All of it, all at once. The chicken bones, the greasy pizza box, the empty dish soap bottle, the dirty diapers, which, as Albert told me, he actually loves them dirty. Every single item gets used, 100% utilization, nothing going back to the landfill. Albert actually kept UBQ in stealth mode for 8 years, refusing to come to market until they perfected the production process and the finished materials. The original plan called for 3 years of R&D, but it took 10. And while most venture capitalists would have killed the venture, Albert kept going. Why? Because when you're introducing a new industrial material, you can't afford to get it wrong. You need Mercedes-level validation, which they now have. UBQ is in Mercedes interiors, McDonald's products, flooring, roofing, and garden furniture. And it works in existing manufacturing equipment, which is a really big deal because that means there's no capital investment required on the part of customers. In fact, you could test it in the morning and ship product in the afternoon. It costs the same as virgin plastic while being carbon negative. And once trash becomes UBQ material, it can be recycled over 10 times, far more than conventional plastics. Just think about the implications. We could cut landfill waste while giving trash a second, third, fourth life and beyond. We could address the recycling crisis. Only 21% of recyclables in America actually get recycled. UBQ's approach sidesteps contamination, sorting, and infrastructure failures entirely. The tech works, the economics work, and UBQ is operating an 80,000-ton facility in the Netherlands with blue-chip customers using their material. But scale hasn't come as fast as you'd expect for something that fits our culture, behavior, and cost concerns, which raises real questions about what it takes to commercialize breakthrough materials, even when the economics and performance are there. That's what I talk about with Albert, and the answers may hold the key to solving waste with carbon-negative materials that actually fit how we live. Here's our conversation. Albert, welcome to Supercool.
Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
There are so many things that make me very excited about UBQ and your business. I feel like we share a similar viewpoint on what it takes to bring sustainable solutions to market and scale them up. What I love is how your solution doesn't ask anybody to change their behavior. It just recognizes. It doesn't condone or pass judgment. It just says, this is the world of recycling or non-recycling we live in today. Let's come up with a solution, an innovation that just deals with reality and actually moves us forward into a preferable future. So with that, thank you for coming. Really glad you're here. Happy to give you a chance to respond to that, and would love to hear about your background and what led you to UBQ.
I couldn't agree more with you in the sense I call myself an industrialist, which is something that in the US doesn't exist anymore. I don't know, you lost it at some point. And you learn very early on that the more complex that you make things for people, the harder it is for change to happen. And I think that in the sustainability world, unfortunately, there's been a lot of things where we've just asked too much from people. And there comes a point where either they get sick of doing it, number one, or they realize that a lot of the work, and this is even worse, a lot of the work that they have been doing, the people who did commit to making the change, they realize that a lot of it isn't really followed up after they do what they were supposed to do. So we've seen some of these videos of people doing their perfect recycling, and then all of a sudden the truck comes and just piles it all back together again. Or you just happen to be drinking water out of a water bottle and somebody comes and starts screaming at you while you're doing that. People don't like being judged. And so that's sort of where we started from, is trying to find a solution that would actually work in the existing world, not in some beautiful, perfect world that doesn't exist. The reason that I got into this, Josh, is, again, I'm a very practical person. I actually come from the chemical and plastics industry. Terribly hated industry that in many ways caused a lot of problems. But I also have a little bit of a different viewpoint on plastics than a lot of people do. I'm from Colombia. I know I sound very American, but I was born in Colombia, lived most of my life there. And in poorer countries, you can't afford certain types of solutions. And a lot of the solutions that we see in the world today are really nice if you're living, in Bel Air in LA or in Manhattan. They're not so useful if you're living in El Chocó in Colombia or in some other poor country in the world. And so for me, plastics have done a lot of good in the world in the sense that they have allowed poor people to have many of the nice things that rich people have had. And some of those nice things are not just nice. It's the difference between somebody getting the right food, healthy food, food that is not spoiled. I used to have very big arguments with my resin suppliers, telling them, look, you guys, we got to fix the problem because plastics do a lot of good in the world, but there is no doubt we've generated a huge problem, and it's called waste. And today we can join that waste with water pollution, with a bunch of other things. So in many ways, the problem has expanded. On the other hand, I just told you that a lot of people, the difference between eating fresh food could be having a plastic package or not having a plastic package. So we need to solve both things. The big companies in many ways didn't go after solving the problem. And that's why we are where we are today. Okay, we should have solved this problem years ago. We didn't. But I started working on a solution, like I say, over 20 years ago. I started taking PET bottles and turning them back into food packaging, taking something from the garbage, literally, and turning it into a food package with something that was, seen with horror almost. How am I going to eat out of something that was in the garbage? But the interesting thing about all that, I understood very early on that recycling would not solve the entire problem. Recycling has been sold to us like a silver bullet. There are no silver bullets when it comes to the environment, okay? We need to build on many, many different types of solutions, and recycling was oversold. And what do I mean by that? People thought that we could recycle 100% of what we throw away. Never gonna happen. And then all of a sudden, this crazy technology comes. 15 years ago, they bring these patents to me, telling me that you can turn the entire garbage bag into a material that replaces plastic. And when I say the entire garbage bag, I mean everything. All the food scraps, all the paper and carton, and all of the mixed plastics. And that to me sounded as one of two things. Either this is impossible, too good to be true, as they say, or, oh boy, these guys really think I'm stupid and, I'm not going to see my money. It's going to end up in some nice Mercedes or Range Rover somewhere, That was my initial feeling about it. 15 years later, I can tell you, not only was it possible, but we can do it over and over again with waste from just about anywhere in the world. And that's exactly what we're doing with UBQ. And the beautiful thing is that the solution that we found for the waste actually replaces plastic as well. So we ended up solving two problems.
Thank you. I appreciate that background and the perspective. And I also appreciate what you're saying about, perhaps here in the States, we think, oh, plastic, if we're attuned and we're
Yes.
aware of the challenge, we're like, oh man, like, why can't we do anything about this? You said something that I thought was very interesting. I think this was in an editorial you wrote for Newsweek, where you had said plastics have done wonderful things for modernization. We take it for granted here in the developed world, but also if you think about other parts of the world where it's like, hey, you're going to eat tonight or not? Well, that depends. Is there a plastic wrapper keeping food fresh? A perspective that we've lost. But while we had all this innovation and while plastic moved forward and plastic became so integrated into the fabric of modern life, the systems that were responsible for dealing with that, for managing its disposal, never caught up. We're never asked to innovate. The incentives weren't there, or for whatever the reasons. This struck me years ago. We had this TV show, Aaron and I, my producer, who you met just before we came on, called The Lazy Environmentalist. And we used to travel around America helping lazy Americans, cities, fashion designers, funeral home directors, you name it, help them go green in ways that they actually might do because it fit how they operate. And we were trying to green this city east of Los Angeles. And I'm sitting there with the mayor in the beginning of the show, and I'm saying, Mayor, I'm trying to get a rise out of him, but I'm like, Mayor, California has these mandates for recycling. It's, 45, 50% of the waste going into the waste stream, needs to be diverted by landfill. You're at like 12%. Don't you feel miserable? How dare you, sir? Whatever. And he's like, yeah, it's awful. He's like, I can't stand that. I also, though, can't stand the fact that our schools aren't up to snuff. Like, our fire department needs more budget. We've got all these crises. Like, I care about this one, but here's all the other things that are just I got to deal with, right? So you've got, like, priority issues. You have policies that's not in place. You've got consumers who think they're doing the right thing. And then it's like, I see this in my house all the time. Oh, we got pizza. Awesome. It's a recyclable cardboard box. Well, yes, but not until the pizza goes in it, and then it's no longer actually recyclable. Exactly. But we have no idea, right? And then we go dump that thing in the recycling bin, and we think we're doing good. And all we're doing on the back end is making it more expensive and harder for someone to sort that thing out. Maybe it's already contaminated everything else in that box. There is no answer, or we certainly haven't come up with one. And so when you say, Albert, and then I'll pause, someone came to you, a number of years ago and said, hey, we have patented technology that can take the entire trash bag and actually go from that waste, and this is what I love, is another phrase you've used, waste to material, right? And it's like,
correct.
That's a world-changing idea. And that's clearly then what led you, I assume, over time to say, well, I'll be an investor in this, and actually, you know what? I think I've got the wherewithal maybe to run this thing and take it global based on your background. Is that a fair way to say it?
Pretty fair. This whole journey ended up being a lot harder than anybody thought. Okay. So look, when I invested, people had already tried to industrialize those patents and failed. And it was very funny because a lot of what people thought was going on ended up being completely incorrect. The original plan I was presented with was a 3-year plan. It took 10 years. And the reason that I like to mention this is I hope young people are listening to me, because in today's world, we have this idea that things have to come in one day. That's not the way that real world works, okay? And much less so in the material or in the science area. Some things just take a very long time. That doesn't mean that we're failing. It just means they take a long time. And you have to persevere in wanting to do that. And this is where I'm going to come back to being an industrialist. If this had been a technology that ended up just in the hands of a normal venture capitalist, this project would have failed. And I don't blame them why, and I'm not passing judgment on why it would fail with the venture capitalists, but the reason is super simple. No one would have stuck with it because the barriers to doing what we ended up doing were very, very big. And the issue is, you just mentioned the pizza box, which is one of my favorite ones because everyone is convinced pizza boxes are getting composted or recycled. Sorry, not one, not the other, okay, because of the grease. So imagine if grease contaminates a pizza box. What all the food does to all the plastic. We all know that different types of plastics don't mix with each other, okay? And then if we love composting, we know that that pizza box will ruin our compost. We also know that any little piece of plastic would limit the compost. So all of these things, this is why recycling is so difficult. Recycling requires cleanliness, separation, and when you think about it, an incredibly complex logistical chain. This is super important. Because people say, I'll separate, but people don't realize, okay, and then how do I take each one of these items to the right place so that they can be reused again? Think of the enormous logistics that we're talking about if we're actually going to separate everything out of the garbage. And there's another product that everybody completely forgets about. Clothing. Everybody hates clothing in the recycling business. And if your shirt is a cotton shirt, it can't be mixed with my polyester one. And if you have a blend, we have the same mess all over again. So what were we able to do at UBQ? First of all, I don't know how much you want to get into the innovation, but we made an enormous list of all the issues that we knew that we had with UBQ. The normal thing, very early on, we already had a plant. Over 12 years ago, we had a plant, and we made a decision not to sell anything. The opposite of what any venture capitalist would have told you. You got to get out there, you got to start selling, you got to be first to market. We made the opposite decision. When you have a material, you can't afford to make a mistake with it. So we spent the next 8 years building an injection molding in our own plant, extrusion, doing the entire innovation process in-house. It was a crazy, crazy thing. No income, spending a lot of CapEx money, just going round and round. And like I said, we had a list this long of issues. Some were processability issues. We needed certifications so that we know that it was safe. We needed all kinds of things, just very long list. And then we started checking one after the other one off for the next 8 years. End result, which is really what I want to get everyone to, is today we have a material that I need you to understand what we're talking about. It's a material made from chicken bones, vegetables, meat, the sushi you had last night, mixed in with that famous pizza box that we've been talking about. We don't care it's full of grease, okay? And there's more dirty paper around there. Yeah. And then all of these mixed plastics. We don't care if it's your polystyrene foam tray or it's a 17-layer film that is required so your food can travel from Chile all the way to New York City or to LA. We take all of it. We take that cotton shirt, we take the polyester shirt that we were talking about. And just to give you a full picture of the incredible thing that UBQ is, we're able to use things like diapers, and we love them dirty. No one else can deal with it, okay? So UBQ, what is the difference between us and everybody else? Every single item I have mentioned until now gets 100% used to make UBQ. It is not a byproduct. It doesn't get sorted out so that we then ship it out with another garbage truck to go back to the landfill. We don't do any of that. That's what a lot of recycling people do. A lot of what they receive ends up in the landfill anyway. We use 100% of what I described to you. That's basically your entire garbage bag. The only two things that we take out of your garbage bag are metals and minerals, things like glass, because they're abrasive. Everything else gets used to make this new material that can replace plastics. So we're talking about a completely different framework on what waste is. We've literally turned household waste from being a problem, landfill or incineration, to being a solution to the entire plastics problem, because we can replace millions and millions of tons of plastic today by using this new material. So it's almost a perfect solution. Again, not a silver bullet. We don't solve electronic waste. We don't solve a lot of industrial waste. I mean, don't think that we solved every problem in the world. We didn't. We solved the household waste problem.
Wow. Just amazing. Taking 8 years, basically saying, hey, we're going into effectively our own lab and we're going to take the time, the investment to really get this right. Because as you said, when you come to market with a material, it's got to be right. And it sounds like, especially when I know you're working with the likes of like a Mercedes-Benz or a McDonald's or a PepsiCo, the biggest companies on the planet, it needs to be right. Just hearing you talk about, like, as an industrialist, you're saying, hey, we're going to do something on this scale, like week to week, month to month, hit this before to get to the next Series A to Series B to, right, like you said, it's be really hard for VCs. We're going to think on a decades-long scale. We're going to think really on a civilizational type change scale. And that means we're just going to go dark effectively and see if we can figure this out and take the risk.
Yes.
Which is amazing. Let me ask you this. I think I read this on the company's website, but I wanted to make sure I understood it. So the material is also classified as bio-based because it's 50% biomaterial, or as you're describing it, which was really interesting to me to say this is a plastic. It also hits this threshold as bio-based, which really had me scratching my head. And then the other thing that I wanted to understand and give you an opportunity to ask is, okay, so you take all of this waste, just as you described it, from dirty diapers, which you love, to banana peels, you name it, that greasy pizza box, and then you get to a UBQ material. And we'll talk about the use cases and where that goes into the market. But once it becomes UBQ material, is that material then recyclable itself? In other words, is there like a circular loop that then says, hey, we actually took this waste that was going to the trash can, we took it out of that waste stream where it was like just going to die and then turn into carbon emissions, right? As methane or whatever going up into the atmosphere. And we're taking it out of that chain or out of that linear system and we're going to turn it into a material, and then we're actually going to create a circular system because this material then itself becomes recyclable. Am I thinking about that properly?
You're thinking about it properly, and there's more detail to it that is super important. So one of them is we're bio-based because 80% of our input is organic. Most of our garbage, we love to think that our garbage, I joke around, if you ask somebody on the street what percentage of our garbage is plastic, they'll tell you 300%. You know, it's like, but the truth is it's about 20% of our garbage normally by weight. So the input is very organic, but the output also has a lot of organics in it still. So UBQ has thermoplastic characteristics. It means that just like polymers, which is what we normally think of as plastics, when you heat them, they melt. And when they're in molten form, they flow. And UBQ has that characteristic, even though it's made from this organic content plus all of these mixed plastics. So that's why we're able to replace plastics in existing equipment. It's because we have that characteristic. But we're still called bio-based. And by the way, when we say bio-based, we're not just talking about something that UBQ invented. It's actually a federal government regulation that says what is bio-based. In other words, UBQ is removing carbon from the atmosphere thanks to all of that organic content. That's one part of it. Now, what happens at the end of life, which is basically what you're asking? Super important for us to understand something. Even if we do nothing else, taking that waste and converting it into a useful product, we've already given life to waste one more time. Imagine if you were able to live twice. You wouldn't be complaining about the fact you can't live another 100 times, right? You'd be very happy with just twice. We've turned something that was going to end up in a landfill or in incineration, and we've converted it into something useful. That's one time. Now, the beauty about UBQ is that precisely because it is not a polymer, and if I'm getting too technical, please stop me. Polymers are chains of monomers. Every single time we process polyethylene, polypropylene, all these polymers, we cut the chains. Every time we cut a chain, we change the mechanical characteristics of that polymer. That's why you can't keep recycling forever and ever. UBQ, because it is this organic content that we were just talking about, one flows right into the other. There's no chains to cut. So if you treat UBQ correctly, we have recycled pure UBQ over 10 times. You cannot do that with plastic without adding anything else. That's one part that is already exciting, right? I mean, the fact that you can just do it over and over, okay? Now, the part that we haven't talked about, and I don't know if you want to wait until we talk about applications, is the fact that UBQ has another beautiful characteristic, which is that it violates the most sacred rule in the plastics world, which is never mix two plastics together. You walk into a plant and they're managing two different raw materials. The first thing they tell you is never, never, never let those two mix. Not even the powder from one mix on another one. I mean, it's a disaster story. UBQ, on the other hand, is compatible. UBQ can be used on its own. It's a thermoplastic. You can injection mold 100% UBQ. But on the other hand, it has another advantage, which for those of us that believe in solving problems, it's an enormous advantage, and you'll understand it in a second from a business point of view. UBQ can be mixed with existing polymers. The same way that we allow these dissimilar polymers to blend together into UBQ, we're also able to attach our UBQ to other polymers. Now, what does that mean? That means that UBQ can be mixed with polypropylene, with polyethylene, with PVC, which is a completely different type of polymer, with polystyrene, not with some of the high engineering plastics, but with those basic ones, which are most of the consumption, we can be mixed. And this is where, I love easy, practical solutions. Now we have become your lazy, how is it you called yourself? The lazy environmentalist? Okay. You're looking at Mr. Lazy right here. The beauty of this is that until now, let's say that you were making cups out of polystyrene and you want to make a PT cup out of recycled PT. Guess what? All your equipment out the window. You need a new extruder, a new thermoformer, new tooling, new grinders, because it's two different polymers, two different materials. So imagine when you come out with a new material that can only be used 100% or 100%. It means you have to ask people to change their investment. It could be hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars worth of investment to switch from one material to another on a worldwide basis. Okay? UBQ, by being able to be mixed with materials, we can literally have the same equipment we're using today, the same tooling we're using today, and we just start dropping UBQ tablets into the formulation. So we've got something made out of 100% polypropylene. We start putting UBQ in there. When we don't like the result, we stop. So if we stopped at 20%, we've replaced 20% of the plastic with this bio-based material. We've used 20% of a material made from post-consumer material, from post-consumer content. We haven't talked about the carbon side. If that's something that you're interested in, the carbon side of it is unbelievable. We're very carbon negative, very, very carbon negative. And we've solved, like I say, we've replaced the plastic. So all of that can be done without having to make a single investment or a very small investment in your capital equipment. We can do it using your existing formulations, which means that people can literally, today, we can literally have someone try UBQ in the morning and ship product with UBQ in the afternoon. That is, if you want lazy man's material, if you look at every single part in everything that I've been talking to you about until now, we have managed to insert ourselves into the existing supply chain, into the existing world, touching it as little as possible, asking as little from others as possible, and yet solving the problems. That is how you get real traction, hopefully, and how you get solutions that actually build on the past, build on what we know, rather than throw away what we've already constructed.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for walking me through all of that. That is so helpful to understand just in terms of the innovation in the material that you've come up with and what it actually means to put that into the real world where we think in our individual lives, oh, why can't this just be made out of recycled materials, or why can't they just do this? And without an appreciation, and I didn't have that appreciation until you just told me that. No, you got to understand, like that means all the machines have to change. All this investment has to now sell those machines for a discount on some market, go buy a new machine, all that, right? All that CapEx, that expenditure, which actually brings more color for me to something I was going to ask you. This is a quote. "This is more than sustainability. It's smart sourcing. There are no more excuses for relying on virgin materials when waste can do the job better." And I'm starting to get this picture of what that means. Let's pivot, because I do want to understand as well the kind of the go-to-market, the business side of where you are today. And so it'd be helpful to understand the initial factory. It sounds like that was in the Netherlands, maybe it was somewhere else, but it sounds like there's a European footprint. So I want to understand the manufacturing footprint, if I have that right. And then also, the applications and who you're working with.
Our original plant and those many years of R&D actually happened in Israel. Okay, our main plant today is in the Netherlands. We have an 80,000 ton plant. The important thing there that I want to leave with you, Josh, as well, is today, because people talk way before they do, we go back to my initial comment, people do too much talking. All of us have read on the internet, I don't know how many times I've read that, we've solved the plastics problem. There's a worm that will eat it. There's this plastic that will melt or dissolve in water. All of these things, okay? UBQ is here today. This is not the dream of what we hope to accomplish 5 years from now or 10 years from now. This is something that I want to leave with your viewers that is super important, which is, like I said, we can test it in the morning, and in many, many hundreds of products, we can have good product to ship in the afternoon. Okay, this is not a dream. And that plant is in the Netherlands. That's 80,000 tons. By the way, if you ever want to come and visit, it's worth visiting. It's an unbelievable plant. We were able to do a lot of crazy things. So for example, no water. Can you imagine using waste and using zero processed water? We don't need to clean anything. We don't need to separate with water. We don't do any of the things that they do. We don't use any additional heat to dry our waste. We actually collect heat from all over the plant with these very big heat pumps, send it right back to the dryer, and dry the waste with heat that was being generated by other parts of the plant. We do a lot of crazy, no effluents, no emissions. It's an amazing plant, okay? We didn't just make a good material. We took a lot of time to make a really, really good process as well. Now, where are we today? We have a lot of great people that are using UBQ, I mean, we mentioned Mercedes, and you said it already. Can you imagine the amount of due diligence they did on us before they accepted using UBQ? Can you imagine the amount of technical inspection, quality control that they asked for before a part can actually go into a Mercedes car? Well, all of those have been done. So for me, that is like getting a seal of approval from,
Basically from God. Yeah, God's like, I
yes.
bless this material.
Okay. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
I tell people in the company, look, if we're rich 5 years from now and all we've done is build one or two plants, we failed. I didn't quit my very comfortable life. And by the way, you should see the people that have come work for us, what they've given up. I'm just one of many. Okay. And by the way, we've been talking a lot about me. You can't imagine the team that I have. They're incredible, incredible people who have been able to do so many things with a very small amount of resources. But the point that where I'm going, we have a very proven material. It's also being used in some very large plastic processing companies. People like Ketter have used it. It's being used for hangars. It's being used, for the sheds outside of your house, flooring, roofing, validated in all of these different industries in a period of, 18 to 24 months. It's incredible what we have been able to do in a very, very short period of time. I mean, there are hundreds of products you could make with UBQ today. I'm not saying 100% UBQ. Remember that we can put it in partially, but we're talking about millions of tons worth of material that could be replaced with UBQ. And one final thing, Josh, that maybe I haven't mentioned at all, and you haven't asked either, which is super important. Every single time we talk about sustainability, there's always one other word attached to it, which is how much is the premium? How much extra is it going to cost me, right? We always get that one. Oh, beautiful product, but costs more. UBQ can compete with oil-based polymers at any point in the cycle, whether oil is at 20 or oil is at 100. So not only did we solve all of these technical things that we've been talking about, but on top of that, we were also able to do it at what I call zero social cost. What I mean by that is that the poorest person in the planet, if they can afford the product today, they will be able to afford it whether it's made with UBQ or not. And the way I like to describe it is you get all the sustainability for free.
Yeah.
That's basically the way that I describe it. And yet, change is very difficult.
Well, I can appreciate all of that, and I appreciate you being so transparent with us and our audience to talk through all of the innovation, everything we've gone through, getting to this point, opening these doors, which is not easy in its own right to be able to get, as far as you are with a Mercedes-Benz or a McDonald's or whomever. But now to take that next step where you're getting these companies to commit. And I've experienced that personally. I mentioned before we came on air, having co-founded this company, Planted, where we make carbon negative building materials. We're working with the largest home builder in America, D.R. Horton. We have an order for 10 million panels. That took a long time to get there. And we got there for a bunch of reasons. Some of it's sustainability, some of it's supply chain security, right? This is a domestic supply chain, and there's a lot of things that make sense for really large builders. But a lot of builders, and we talked to almost all of the publicly traded builders, the most well-known ones, I won't name them here, but we experienced the same friction where they would say, okay, tell me about your material. Oh, well, it has these XYZ properties. We actually think it's better than what you use today, but it just doesn't fit their procurement policies. So it's like, it's just not going to happen no matter what. Like, it's just not going to happen. So for you to get through that, where do you go? Like, with other industries where you feel like there's more uptake? I mean, we've had folks on this show like Interface Floor with carbon negative tiles, and they're doing some real innovation in terms of the materials they put in, to their product.
Yeah.
Like, who do you go to? How do you think about breaking through this barrier?
For example, Interface is a company that we could easily be working with. And I believe we've done a little bit of work with them. What we have done is basically segment the market. There's a very large market that is a very simple, what I call UBQ adoption, which is almost everything that you go into a Walmart, an IKEA, Target to buy made out of plastic. The garbage bin, the shed, the garden furniture, all of those things. We have a line of products that are already geared for that. We know how to do it. We know how to teach people how to do it. So that's one segment. There, what we need is the pull from the retailer. We need the retailers to come on board. And the other one is construction materials. That's where I see UBQ making an enormous impact on the world. We both know, because you're in that industry as well, that construction materials and agriculture are the two biggest predators in the world. If we really want to talk about the environment, those are the two worst. We need tons of materials and we need to chop down a lot of stuff to get both of those going. Okay, so construction is one that we believe that UBQ could be used in a myriad of applications, and we're already working with some very large construction material people, mostly in Europe, because there's a lot of regulation in Europe, so we're working there a lot. But the one thing that I have also found, and this is super interesting, companies that actually have an owner act far more responsibly and quickly than the ones that don't have an owner. So what that tells me, it's very funny. You'll have two companies make the same product. One flies, the other one, you're there 3 years later and you're still at square one. And it's a question of will. And what I have found is the companies with owners have an enormous will to do things when they want to do them. And then some of these corporate companies, unless they have a leader that really, really wants to make his mark, becomes a lot harder because you have to basically convince an entire constituency. And any one of those constituents actually has veto power. But on the other hand, we do see some of those corporate citizens being willing and able to move things along also. So I have, there's a retail chain in Europe called Action that no one's heard of, but they've got 4,800 stores. They're actually a discount retail store, imagine. And they decided that they wanted to be environmental, and you should see all the things that we're doing with them. So it all depends on that will. But like I say, we're very well segmented so that we know how to play in each place, how to teach people how to use UBQ. We understand that in some places, by the way, if you want to change roofing, it might take you 2 years. There's a lot of testing to do. There's a lot of things to do. In some other applications, we can do it in an afternoon. So we look at all of that. We look at how much a company cares about sustainability, and then we look at what is their will to change. And that last part, to me, has become the most important part. Is this a company that is really going to push the change, or is this a company that is just going to sit on it and all they want to do is, look nice but not do nice?
All of that makes sense to me. I think having had a chance to talk to you, spend time with you, doing this podcast together, what strikes me is that someone who comes out of this industry has built as I understand, a family business that then went global and has that experience you have that in your background, but then has the will and the tenacity and the perseverance to say, hey, we're actually going to take years to make sure that we're coming to market with something that is perfect. We're not testing along the way. Like, we're going to do the investment on a time scale, with a time scale in mind that really is pushing a paradigm shift. I am quite certain and looking forward to seeing how this next phase unfolds and who you partner with and how you scale it up, because I am sure it's coming. We're
going to make it happen.
And it sounds like the team that's with you, the technology, the patents to get to the point where you are is just amazing. So with all that to say, I'm very excited for your future, and I'm very excited that you're the one that's in the seat that's going to keep pushing that change, because it's awesome and it's exactly what we need. So thank you, Albert.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for those nice words, because they give me a little more energy to go out there and keep giving it.
Heartfelt, man.
Thanks
Let's
a lot.
Go. And thank you for listening. If you're enjoying Supercool and appreciate our conversations that merge climate, innovation, and commerce, please take a moment to subscribe and leave us a review. It's the best way you can help the show reach other future-forward decision makers who would benefit from these conversations too. See you next time.